Hello, and welcome back to Oh My Health, There Is Hope, the podcast. I'm your host, Jana Short, and today we are here with this incredible woman. Talk about hitting peaks. I'm here with Jen Drummond today, and let me tell you a little bit about this amazing woman. Jen is a mom of seven, a successful business owner, and world record holder. As the first woman to climb the second highest summits on each of the seven continents, she now spends her time inspiring others to create a thriving business and lasting legacy of their own. And let me tell you guys, it's all about the legacy we leave behind. She shares her story and strategies for success through her book, BreakProof, which is pre-sold now, but by the time this comes out, you guys will be able to go get it and have it in your hands. But it's called BreakProof, 7 Strategies to Build Resilience and Achieve Your Life Goals. And Seek Your Summit podcast is another thing that she does. I love this podcast. I've become a huge junkie of it. She also has programs and signature talks that she does. If you want to learn more about how she elevates devoted and determined entrepreneurs to go beyond a life of success to a life of significance, you guys are going to be able to follow her on her website at www.jendrummond.com. And this is all going to be in your show notes. You guys can just go click and be in her world. Jen, welcome to the show. We're so excited to have you here, or I'm so excited.
I'm excited to be here. So thank you. Thank you.
One of the very first things we ask all of our guests is to share their story of hope. And I say this at the beginning of every episode. Our stories of hope become this beautiful light that guides us into where we're going, teaches us a lesson or something we need to move to the next. And when we share those stories, it's like heartbeats from us to them that helps inspire them and move them through their journey. So do you want to share your story of hope with us today?
I do. So mine happened on December 18 of 2018. I was in a horrific car crash coming home to my house, encountered a semi. The police came to the accident. I went to the hospital. I was actually released from the hospital the same day. I got a phone call from the police station about a week later, and they're like, Jen, we have tried every possible scenario to recreate this accident where you live. We can't do it. We can't even rebuild this accident where you walk, like live, but don't walk. Like there's not a scenario that we can build, but it just like, and it was fascinating, right? Because I got that information. I was already shocked from the accident, but that brought it home to a different level. A week after that experience, a girlfriend of mine that had asked me to go running for the day. I didn't have time to go running that day. She still went. It was wet out. She slipped, she hit her head, and she never came home. And so I'm in this like processing of like, why was I saved? Why did I not die in this horrific car crash? Why did she pass away in something that we're encouraged to do that's healthy? Like, where does any of this make sense? And nothing made sense, right? The only thing that I could come away from is I don't get to choose when I die, but I sure get to choose how I live. And life truly is a gift. And my gift back to it is doing my authentic self. And that has been the line in the sand and a checkpoint that I measure myself against every day. Am I living?
I love it. I know a lot of people can relate to that. We've all had something happen in our lives that were pivotal moments of change. And I love what you're doing with your change. So what I'm going to ask you next is the story about why you decided to climb the 7-second summits is phenomenal. Do you want to share a little bit of that with us?
Yes. Okay. So I'm alive, right? 2019 becomes this year of who am I? Why am I here? What am I doing with my life? And I just got curious. And I started allowing myself to dream and play and put a whole bunch of things on a list that I wanted to do. And on that list was climb a mountain. In 2020, I was turning 40. So I'm like, oh, what do I want to do for my 40th birthday? I looked over this list I curated and climb a mountain stood out. Because I'm like, I'm only getting older. This is going to be easier the younger I am. Let's climb a mountain. I asked friends that were into mountaineering, hey, if you could climb one mountain in the whole world, what would you climb? And everybody came back with a mountain named Ama de Blanc. I had never heard of it, but they're like, it's the Paramount Pictures logo. So every time you go to a movie, you can be like, I climbed that mountain. I'm like, okay, perfect. That sounds great. And it means the mother's necklace. I have 7 children, so that felt appropriate. So I'm training for Ama de Blanc. And if anybody recalls back to 2020, COVID entered the scene. And so we weren't traveling anywhere. And in fact, I became a homeschool teacher to 7 children because school shut down. So I'm doing that homeschool thing, giving my kids those pep talks like, we got this. And my guy that was struggling with his math didn't really like the pep talk that day. And he started talking back and he goes, Mom, if we do hard things, why are you climbing a mountain called I'm a Dumb Blonde instead of a real mountain like Mount Everest? I'm listening to him. I'm like, honey, it is Ama de Blanc, not I'm a Dumb Blonde. Like, what? Finish your homework. We'll look at Everest. So he finishes homework. We look at Everest. He goes to bed. I'm still looking at Everest. And I thought, you know what? If this kid thinks the hardest thing in the whole world is to climb Mount Everest, I'm going to climb it. And I'm going to show him that whatever our Everest is, we can summit. So I call up a coach, tell him I want to do this. He's like, yep, with your background, we can get you ready. Buy this book about becoming an uphill athlete. So I bought the book. I'm reading it. In the front of this book, there's a lady who got a Guinness World Record for doing something in the Alps. And I told my coach, like, I could have done that. Like, that would be something that I could suffer through and do. And my kids would think I'm cool because homeschooling Jen is not a cool version. And our relationship's not working out very well. And I need something that like builds me up and makes me feel cool again. And he's like, I'll think of something. I'm like, okay, fine. And I left it. And a few weeks later, he calls me back and he thought of something. He's like, Jen, you should climb the 7-second summits. Like, everybody listening here, I don't even know what he's talking about. It sounded like a tongue twister. He's like, listen, the 7-second summits are the second highest point on each of the 7 continents. It's harder than the first 7. It's only been done by one male, and you'd be the first woman. And think about it. 7 mountains, 7 continents, 7 children. It sounds like a jackpot. I'm like, it does sound like a jackpot. And like, I had never slept in a tent before, but for some reason I got this whole body. Yes. Like, let's try this. This is worthy of pursuit. And so that started the adventure.
You know, one of the things I've learned from you, I'm diving into her book right now. Thank you so much for the beautiful copy. But I'm diving into her book right now. One of the things I learned is that there's no such thing as instant gratification, right? We all want the thing now. And going through your journey, you guys have got to watch her videos on YouTube. They are moving, they're inspiring. But the one I watched was your K2 one. That, I mean, I've watched them all, but my husband was so intrigued. He sat down and watched the entire thing with me and asked me to play it again. It was hard work. It wasn't 2 of the mountains you had to reclimb or go back to attempt again. Yes. When you want big things, they aren't instant gratification. There's lots of work. Some of the things that you've talked about preparing, taking the box to your son's game so that you're climbing it all the time. And like, there's just so many things that you did because you were so invested in the outcome and the vision of it. I would have quit. I would have gotten to the point where we were at base camp. Just getting to base camp for me would have been, I'm out.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We all have our different specialties, I promise.
I want to talk about like some of the perseverance that you had to go through, because it wasn't, when you set that goal, it wasn't something you were going to get in a month or 2 months or even in the year. Or what made you even think, I'm going to keep going, I'm going back to that mountain and I'm going to do it again?
Yeah. So going back is the worst part, right? Because now when you go for the first time, everything's new and you're like, okay, well, if we finish, I never have to do this again. Right. So your tolerance band is wider because you're like, okay, this is a one and done. This is a one and done. It'll be fine. When you have a horrible experience at a mountain and all of a sudden you don't summit, right? Like, I elected not to summit on both occasions. So on K2, which is a very deadly mountain in Pakistan, it's the 2nd tallest peak in the world. When we were climbing, a day behind me, one of my teammates was climbing and got caught in an avalanche and didn't make it. And another one got injured and all kinds of terrible things happened. They called the radio. So we got the message and we had the choice to either keep climbing or go back down. And I just remember thinking, like, how is that even a choice? Like, our teammate just died. Like, we do not have a choice. Like, we should go down. So we went down and did all the things, like buried a human and helped an injured one get out and hiked out and got home. And I remember getting home earlier than my kids did from camp. And when they came back from camp, they're like, Mom, did you summit? I said, no, I didn't, but I had success. And they looked at me confused, like, what do you mean? I'm like, listen, guys, who we show up as people is way more important than anything we'll ever achieve. And when you have that choice, I hope you always put people over peaks, because peaks will always be there. And my kids are like, okay. And so like, I felt like that happened so I could have a lesson to show my family, like how we interact when things don't go our way, or when we have a choice, we need to put people first, because our whole lives, we're going to be given those choices to put careers first or people first or families first, or, like it's always something we have to decide. But now I had to go back to Pakistan. Pakistan is not the friendliest country in the whole world. There's friendly people, but in general, their customs are a little more restrictive than what we have here in the US. And that climb is hard. And I had a bad experience. And so now I'm going back into that and I'm not excited about it at all. I'm trying to give myself that pep talk and find the meaning and all the things that we do. And 3 weeks before it was time to leave, I got a phone call about a person who had been training to climb and didn't have the resources to actually join an expedition. And they were wondering if I could help. I'm like, okay, yeah, I can bring some stuff over and help a little bit. So I went back to K2. I had success. So on July 22 of 2022, I became the third American female to stand on its summit. But more importantly, 30 minutes after my climb, the first Pakistani female, the first Muslim female, stood on top of her country's prized peak. And now I know why I failed that first time, because the universe was using me for more. There was more to the story that I got to participate in. And I'm a mom, I have twin daughters. I know firsthand how important it is for them to see people that look like them at the tops of companies, at the running, marathons, on a mountain climb, like doing things, because it gives them permission to do the same. And so it's very important for me to be a part of that person's story, so that little Muslim girls around the world can see themselves in a different scenario.
Man, I want to cry, because I got to tell you, this is one of my biggest message to women. I used to say when I was in the boardroom, men put me in my place and women competed with me. And we shouldn't be competing with each other. And when we finally get to that vision of ours, don't walk through the door, turn around and help someone else through. Like, give them your experience, give them like whatever they need to make that process and kind of pay it forward. So before we start walking through these beautiful doors of success that we've worked so hard, just remember you didn't get there alone, and to turn around and put your hand out to help someone else through. So for me, that even if you didn't get to the peak, that would be a huge success. And you're right. The universe has a story for us. And if I remember right, is that the mountain you climbed when you found out you had anthrax?
Yes. 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 Okay. So nothing, like, I think like humans in general just avoid pain at all cost, right? Like, it's just like, so I was hiking in for the second time to K2 and I got giardia, which is quite common in these environments. So I went on an antibiotic. The antibiotic wiped out all my good and bad bacteria. And I'm the person who always checks on the animals. That's just my personality. And we have donkeys and things that like carry the gear in. So I was making sure they had food and like the hay was all collected and blah, 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 blah. Well, one day, one of those donkeys sneezes on me, right? Like, and I'm full of donkey slime. I'm like, I am not coming to check on you again. Are you kidding me? I'm the only person that cares about you and you sneeze on me? And I guess like third world countries, their farm animals can carry anthrax, which normally you would have enough bacteria to fight it off. But because I was already compromised, that bacteria got in my stomach and then presented like giardia. And so then I would go on an antibiotic again for 5 days. I'd be fine for 2 days and it would get worse again. And I kept doing that. I had lost 30 pounds climbing this mountain and we didn't even get to climb yet. And when it was time to go, they're like, Jen, do you want to climb? I'm like, I would rather throw up the entire time or have diarrhea the entire time I go up this mountain than come back here again. So yes, I'm going to climb. So I climbed that thing. It was like not my prettiest climb, but whatever, we got it done. And here's the irony of this story. So I don't know I have anthrax, right? Like no one knows to test for it. They just think I have a stomach something. I get down to base camp and I'm like calling my family on my satellite phone to share my great news. But when I go to call on the phone, I have a voice message. And the voice message is from a camp counselor because my two oldest sons are at Yosemite National Park while I'm climbing K2. And they decided they didn't like it. So they decided that they were checking themselves out, which means they had their own counselor and were at a hotel room until I could go pick them up. And so I call this camp. I'm like, oh, that's cute. They're going to be in camp. Get them back out there. They'll be fine. And she's like, I'm sorry. They're at the age where they actually have a say in what they're doing and they don't want to be here. So we're not forcing them to be here. I'm like, I just climbed K2. It's going to be a little bit for me to get home. So I left all my gear in Pakistan. I had to hike 55 miles out in 36 hours. I got to the airport. I flew home. I was like livid with these children. I'm like, how can you be this spoiled and you're entitled blah, blah, blahs, right? And then I go to the hospital because everybody's like, you look like you're dead. Like you should go to the hospital. I go to the hospital. The hospital starts running tests. And they're like, were you by farm animals? And at first I was like, no, are you kidding me? I was climbing a mountain. Why would I be by farm? Yes, I was by farm animals. They were carrying our gear in. And so then they ran another test. They're like, you have anthrax. So I had to go to like IV antibiotics. It was this huge deal. And the doctor goes to me, he's like, I just want to let you know that you have a 40% chance of living right now. He goes, if you were in Pakistan for one more day, definitely 2 more days, you wouldn't be here today. And he goes, I'm quite confident the only way you would have came home at the speed you came home is if something was wrong with your kids. So be mad at them, but understand that the universe has your back.
Oh, I got you.
I know, crazy.
So I want to talk before we finish up about your book, BreakProof, and the 7 strategies to peak your own summits. Like your summit doesn't have to be a K2 summit. It doesn't have, it could be little summits that you have to take to get to the bigger picture. But I love that you have these incredible strategies that helped you accomplish all of this that we can use in everyday life to accomplish the things that we're moving towards, whatever our summit looks like. Tell us a little bit about, first of all, what inspired you to write it and who the reader is for it.
Yeah. So I was halfway through the pursuit, went out to lunch with a friend and was telling stories of the experiences I've had. And he's like, you have to write a book. I hate mountaineering. I will never climb a mountain. This is fascinating. I'm so intrigued. I want to learn more. And I've built a successful company. Now I've climbed these mountains. It was fascinating to me how much the lessons were the same. Right. And I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to make this so that I'm going to take the reader to the experience. We're going to extract a lesson that they can apply to their own life. So when they start climbing their metaphorical mountains, maybe physical, that they know like, hey, this thing's coming, or this is a way to do it when you run into this obstacle. And one of my favorite lessons from this whole experience has been big mountains take big teams. And I think a lot of us set these big goals and then all of a sudden it starts getting hard or like it's like heavy or whatever. And then we start compromising and we start trying to renegotiate like really what our goal is. And all I'm asking is like, you stop, just pause, like take a break. Okay. That's why the book's called BreakProof. Take a break and look at your situation and evaluate it. And I'm guessing 9 times out of 10, you're doing it too much by yourself. You don't have a big enough team to help you get to the summit. And so that's a cue to not renegotiate, but to say, okay, who can help me get further up this mountain or Sherpa some of this load or make this possible? Because this vision that came to you is yours to carry out. And these obstacles that present themselves are yours to learn who you are and how to become a better human and reach that summit.
Wow. I am enthralled with it so far. So I'm just getting into it. I would recommend everyone do it because we all have a summit. But here's the thing too, that I love that you shared. Our break sometimes is our most beautiful moment. Would I want to go back and go through, like you would never want to go through that accident again or wish it on anyone. I would never want to go back a decade ago to where I was given a few weeks to survive. I would not want to experience that, and I would not wish it on anyone. I also would not change it in my life. So there was another thing that which reminded me of you because I heard you say it on one of the talks that you gave or something you wrote. But you said that if someone asked you, would you do everything again? You always hear these people say, no, because it made me who I am. But you'd be a fool. You'd be a fool to not do better the next time around. So you would do things differently, right?
Yes.
So, like, you went to K2 a second time and things were different. You did things differently. And so, for those of you who say, I would never change a thing about my life, it made me who I am. Yes. And I'm so grateful for who you are. But if I had to do it over again, there's so many things I would change.
Definitely. And that's like part of learning, right? That's experience. That's us discovering ourselves and realizing like, hey, what I know now, I would love to be able to apply that and like let it change the scenario and see what unfolds.
I love it. First of all, Jen is our Woman of the Year for Best Holistic Life magazine. We were super excited to give her that honor. And by the way, we had so many applicants. So she is pretty amazing, and what she's accomplished is amazing. And her book was, I believe, our motivational book of the year because it's so motivating to learn the skills to get through your summits, to, peak the things that you want to see happen. And so we were super honored to be able to give you that honor for everything you've accomplished. She's also our cover girl for, I believe it is March issue. So I can't wait until that comes out so that you guys can all share in some of her joy. We are also going to put all of Jen's links into the podcast notes. You can go grab her book. You can go check her out. By the way, go to her YouTube channel. There is so much goodness there that I'm obsessed with it. And I love that I can now just hit my phone and it shows up on my television and I could just sit there and watch all the goodness. Jen, I want to just congratulate you on all your accomplishments because here's what I see when I see you. I see a legacy of change for the world. Like what we do now, we may not ever see it. I'm okay with not seeing what the effects, the ripple effects are that I put into the world. But I know I have grandkids and one day I'm going to be a great grandma. Like I have two that are turning 18 this year. So at some point I'll be a great grandma and I know that they're watching and the things I do are embedding in their beautiful little spirits. And someday the legacy I leave behind, which I'll never see, I am so grateful for. And I am very grateful for the legacy that you are putting out in the world, hearing you talk about the conversations you have with your kids, how they're going to react to friends and their children as they grow up. It's powerful. So sometimes we don't see the fruit of our labors here, right? The real true fruits. And I'm still not going to stop pushing through till every breath I have, right? I'm going to be making change in the world.
Definitely. Definitely. That's what inspires us, right? We know that we have ripple effects on the next generation. And everybody who's listening here today, if you want to type the word Everest to the number 33777, so text Everest to 33777, I set aside a special video that you'll get text messaged, and it is the Milky Way going over the base camp of Mount Everest. And so anytime you're feeling like life is getting big or heavy or hard, I always look at that photo myself, and the little video reminds me like we're so significantly insignificant, and how beautiful is that? So hopefully that helps you through a tough moment.
You know what? I'm going to add to that. We are significantly insignificant when you look at the whole thing. But when you think about us as a full, when you look at the Milky Way with all of them, it's powerful. So together we make a powerful impact. Thank you, Jen, so much for being on the podcast. We love you and think you're amazing. Keep doing incredible things.
Thank you. Thank you.